Good evening. Welcome to the August 19th, 2025 meeting of the Portsmouth Zoning Board of Adjustment. Please note for tonight's presentation and all of our meetings, 15 minutes will be given for each presentation, 5 minutes for public comment. When you come to the podium to speak, please state your name and spell your last name for the record and state your address, please. So our first item of business is Roman numeral 1, approval of minutes. It's the approval of the July 15th, 2025 meeting minutes. And do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Mr. Rossi? And second?
Second.
Mr. Neese? And any additions, changes, anything to the meeting minutes for July 15th? Mr. Neese?
Yeah, I have a couple changes. First one is on minutes page 9, which I think is our packet, page 12. 10th line down at the end. Add the word currently, so the phrase reads, not as many activities currently taking place.
Okay.
Same page, down below that, section C, there's a motion to withdraw. The vote was actually 6-0 with Mr. Neese recused.
Okay. Is there anything else?
Yes, one more.
Go ahead.
On page 11, under the timestamp 23742, right at the last line, add the word did, so it reads, but did not think. It just reads, but not think right now. That's
Okay.
all I have.
All right, does anybody else have anything? So the motion is to approve the July 15, 2025 meeting minutes with the additions suggested by Mr. Neese. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the meeting minutes are adopted. The second order of business is the approval of the July 22nd, 2025 meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve that?
Motion to approve.
Mr. Masson, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Neese, and are there any changes? Suggested changes? Okay, so the motion is to approve the July 22nd, 2025 meeting minutes as written. All in favor?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. So they approve 6-0. The first order of business is under Roman numeral 2A, old business A, 92 Brewster Street. This is not a public hearing. It is a rehearing request filed by one of the abutters. And Mr. Rayum is actually recused for the consideration of this rehearing request. And discussion or anything from the board? And just a reminder that in order to rehear it, there would have to be three votes in favor, correct? So. We have five sitting.
While we're looking that up, I will say that, having read the petition, I did not find any support that there was a substantive error made by the board. It seems to be largely disagreement with the viewpoint of the board, which is not actually an error. So I would not be in favor of a rehearing on this matter.
Okay. Are there any other comments from any other board members?
Then I'm prepared to make a motion to deny the request for a rehearing.
Let me just make sure that we have the rules right. So, Steph, did you look at that? Still looking at it, sorry. Okay.
Well, I'll second that if is the way to proceed.
Okay, so granting a request for a rehearing of a variance or special exception requires a majority vote of the members present and voting, or in the case of a tie vote, 3 affirmative votes shall be required. So the majority of the vote of people here would be 3 as 5. Okay. So, Mr. Rossi, your motion?
The petition is based on disagreement with the board's reasoning and conclusions and does not point any substantive errors. And on that basis, it does not qualify for a rehearing.
Okay, and the second from Mr. Mattson?
I share similar thoughts. I appreciate the concern, but it's more a matter of different points of view than erring.
Okay. Any discussion on Mr. Neese?
Just to add to that, just specific to a couple points that were raised, one of the expressions of public interest is the zoning ordinance, and the building itself complies with all elements of the zoning ordinance. The applicant has the right to have an ADU, and the measurements of the building all fit within the zoning ordinance. The setback, there was a concern about the setback being measured inappropriately, that it should be measured, I think, from the right-of-way. That's not what our ordinance calls for.
Any other discussion? Okay, so the motion is to not rehear 92 Brewster Street. I'm going to do a roll call vote, and I'll start with Mr. Mattson.
Yes is to deny?
Yes is to deny.
Yes.
Yes.
And Mr. Rossi? Yes? did
Yes.
you- Okay. Mr. Nees?
Yes.
Mr. Mannel?
Yes.
And the chair also votes yes. So the rehearing request is denied by 5-0. Thank you. The next order of business is also under old business, and it is the request of Green Guard Center for Autism owner for property located at 89 Brewery Lane, whereas relief is needed for a change of use from an assisted living home with 5 residents to an assisted living center with 6 residents, which requires the following. 1, a variance from section 10.440, use number 2.11 for an assisted living center where it is not permitted. Said property is located on Assessor Map 146, Lot 26, and lies within the Character District 4L2, CD4L2 zone. And who is here to speak to this application?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tim Phoenix from Hopeful Phoenix, Gormley and Roberts, here on behalf of the Green Guard Center. With me tonight is Barbara Frankel, the board chair and original proponent of this property, which has been serving members of the community for approximately 7 or 8 years at this point. Also with me from Green Guard is Tanya Newkirk, who's the executive director. We also have the parent of the adult child with autism who would live in this 6th room. Thank you, Steph. Can you go to page A101? Thank you. So this project was approved originally in 2015, then again in 2018 as I always get them confused. From an assisted living home, which was permitted by special exception, to now with 6 or more residents, it's an assisted living center, which is not permitted in the zone and therefore requires a variance. So looking at this page from these are the old site plans from back in 2018, but they haven't changed. And one of the important factors for you folks is that nothing physically is changing. Nothing in the outside, nothing in the parking lot, nothing inside the building. In fact, the area that we want to now use as a living area for another adult child is not changing at all. So historically, if you look at the top left of that, there was a little apartment there where a live-in caretaker resided. If you go to the next page, Steph. And then up in the top right of that, and you'll see, I can't read them very well from here, but the larger areas to the left, center up and down, and lower right, those are rooms. There's another one, those are living quarters for 4 of the existing 5. The other is on the first floor, and that page we just looked at. Up at the top right was originally the staff room. Well, the operation of the facility has changed somewhat, so there is no longer a full-time resident living in that apartment that I showed you on the earlier page. Therefore, the staff uses that, and the staff, I'm reading from an email that was provided to us by them, which you do not have. There is no longer a house parent, as I just mentioned. Instead, each resident uses a 1-to-1 aide during the 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Period during the day, and then there are 3 overnight staff. And of those 3 overnight staff, 1 person is working, awake and working, helping the residents if needed, one person is sleeping and the other two are awake. So when someone else takes over, another person goes to sleep. So what's happened here is that there's just simply no need for the staff quarters that's up in that top right on this image, because that use is now in this old, what I'm calling the apartment, where the house parent or live-in parent used to reside. There's also a formal supervisor on call, which they didn't have back then. So somewhat oddly, we need a variance rather than a special exception to go from 5 to 6 residents. But there are other, I'm trying to find it, there are other more intensive uses that can be done by special exception, and I'm looking for that now. A residential care facility for more than 5 is more intensive, but doesn't require variance. So it's somewhat of an anomaly in the ordinance, in my estimation. Also, as you all know, this home is located in what I call kind of an eclectic area. On Chevrolet Avenue are the condominiums that were built several years ago. Others are going up now. Across the street, so to speak, is the plaza, where there are numerous businesses, including the Green Guard day visit operation, where most of these adults go for services every day, at least during the week. So they are out of the facility for most of the time. And of course, a little farther away, we've got another apartment building as you head towards, I still call it the Pick and Pay Plaza. I think it's different now, but if you've been around a while, where all those businesses are. And then as you go over to Cass Street, it's mostly residential. Back in 2015, before this was done, there was a old and poor quality home there, and that was taken down in favor of this building. The center also owns most of that street, just coincidentally and oddly. One of the things that's pending, and if you read the staff report, there was a mention of that something that should have happened back in 2018 or thereafter, is to grant the city an easement to travel over the portion of that street that is regularly used by the public, including me, but is privately owned. That has been brought forward now. My co-counsel, Monica Kaiser of my office, has been working with Trevor McCourt of the city attorney's office on that. He has in his hands a draft of the easement, and the proposal by the staff with which we concur is to make any approval contingent upon finalizing that and getting it recorded. So turning real quickly to the requirements of the variance, I always do the first two together. The variances are not contrary to the public interest and the spirit of the ordinances observed under the Malachi Glen case, because the Supreme Court found that they're similar. I then go through, which I won't repeat, it's in my submission, the bullet items of the purposes of the ordinance, but the underlying test is, will granting the variance alter the essential character of the locality? And the answer is no. It formerly had, it was staff space, and there was someone else living there. That no longer is necessary, so there will be a new resident living there. And you'll hear momentarily from the parent of the young man who's going to move in here. And these services are sorely needed in this area, and they are very limited. So we are hopeful that we can add this additional unit. The character of the locality will not change at all. Parking doesn't change, the outside doesn't change, the inside doesn't change. The only thing that changes is going from 5 residential units to 6. Or will it threaten the public health, safety, or welfare? Because of the nature of the operation and the staff that's on site 100% of the time, there is no threat. Let's see, there's no staff changes needed. The residents typically don't, I don't think any of them drive. So the parking spaces, according to the staff, doesn't change. Thirdly is that substantial justice will be done, and the test is if there's no benefit to the public outweighing the hardship to the applicant, this factor is satisfied. Again, I won't belabor it. The structure was built to house autistic adults with services and a live-in caretaker. The caretaker is no longer needed. and we have staff there all the time. So the residential staff street that you see up here on the top right is no longer needed for staff. Thus, we can, without changing it a bit, now offer it for residential use requiring this variance. So there's no harm to the public, yet denial will deny both Green Guard of being able to provide another residence and some income stream from it, and more importantly, the family to provide a home for a 25-year-old young man in need of these services and a home. Fourth is granting the variance will not diminish property values. As I said, a residential care facility for more than 5 residents, which is more intensive, can be done with a special exception. The intensity change will not even be noticed because you're going from what was originally a live-in and staff to now just staff and this resident. So there's can be no diminution to property values. And then finally is the hardship, 3 prongs, special conditions. We're located in a transitional area with intensive commercial uses, a large parking lot right across the street, residences nearby and across Chevrolet Avenue, Pick and Pay Plaza around the corner, and then, of course, the homes on Cass Street, which vary from single families to 2-family, and there may be even some multifamily. So the board has already found, I don't know if a special exception requires a finding of hardship, but certainly the board has already found that the 5 units was reasonable. We see no reason that the 6 units are not reasonable, are not reasonable, and therefore we believe that there are special conditions based upon the lot and what's happened in the past and the existing building. Secondly, no fair and substantial relationship between the public purposes of the ordinance and its application here. Use restrictions are intended to keep similar uses together, avoid conflicting uses, and provide transition between zone. This fulfills that purpose. And then finally, the third prong is that the proposed use is reasonable. The underlying use for 5 was permitted by special exception. We're just adding the 1 additional resident, essentially replacing the live-in staff, live-in parent that was there when this started, which is no longer necessary because of technology, et cetera. So for all of those reasons, we ask that you grant the variance. I told my people I would look at them when I was done, particularly Barbara and Tanya, to see if I misstated anything about it. They're saying no, so you don't need to hear from them. That's all I have, unless you have questions. You probably will hear from the parent of this young man, who I was introduced to and I already forgot her name.
Before we hear from them, Attorney Phoenix, is there any questions from the board as to the presentation? Mr. Rayam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So taking a look at the general area zoning map that you provided, it's on page 47 of our packet. So the CD4L2 that your client's property falls into mostly goes down Islington Street, then kind of makes a left-hand turn, as it were, going up along the Albany Street and then onto the privately owned way. CD4W is on the other side. CD4W, the assisted living center, is allowed by right. But on the opposite side of your client's property, the GRC, once again, it is not allowed to have an assisted living center. So I'm just trying to understand, you're kind of forming like a buffer between those 2 zones. Is there anything else about the nature of your property or your client's property that would help reassure us that, that buffering sort of would take place with the 6 residents up against the GRC properties along Cass Street?
Yeah, fair question. My response to that is that, to the best of my knowledge, there haven't been any issues between the neighbors and the existing 5 residents that have been there for now, 7, roughly 8. I don't know when it was built. I just don't remember. But the second approval was in 2018. That you can speak in a minute. So, the adding of 1 additional resident in place of someone who used to have a car there and park, an adult who would be coming and going as anybody else who lives in an apartment, that's no longer going to be necessary. So the overall intensity, I would argue, is less than it was when it was approved as a special exception. Barbara or Tanya, you have to come up here and introduce yourself and make a comment.
Hi, I'm Dr. Barbara Frankel, Frankel, and I'm the founder and chair of the board of the Green Guard Center for Autism. And my son also lives in one of the spaces in the residence. And it opened to 2 residents in June of 2021 during COVID. Yeah.
So that corrects my guess of 2018.
Way off.
Did I answer your question, David?
I mean, I think so. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of explain that. I think it's a pertinent point to this application. So my other question would be, would your client be okay if this board made a stipulation that there'd be no more than 6 residents?
Yes, they're nodding, so I'll say yes. There's no other space for more residents at this point.
Yep.
Any more questions for the applicant's attorney? So I think that Mr. Rayum actually touched on the point that I was going to ask, whether or not there are any plans to expand. Assisted living center is 6 or more residents, but it doesn't define an upper cap.
Right.
And obviously, the variance runs with the land, so it's possible that, you know, this structure could be taken down and something larger could be put up.
Then the stipulation makes sense, because it could be 100, for all anybody knows, so.
I mean, it should be
yeah.
great in some way, but we're here to defend the zoning ordinance.
Yep,
so.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. No, if there are no further questions, would you
Okay.
like to have your client speak? Or the mother of the applicant?
Hi, I'm Jane Bannister, Bannister. I live at 130 South Road in Kensington, New Hampshire. My son Peter has been part of the Green Guard Center since 2016. He was 16 years old. He did transition out of Exeter High School and has been there basically full-time through COVID. It's been amazing. It's very hard to put into words what this opportunity represents to not just Peter, but to our family. Peter's a part of the community in Portsmouth, and the opportunity to be in such a supportive, inclusive environment that appreciates and values his strengths as well as his challenges is really unmatched by anything else that we've looked at around the state. And we've looked at a number of opportunities. We've explored opportunities in Massachusetts. We've looked at opportunities in other states, and the level of comfort and confidence that my husband and my daughter and I have in Peter's success staying with the Green Guard Center in the Green Guard residence is immeasurable. I'm not sure what else I can say except the approval of this will change our lives significantly.
Thank you. Any questions, Ms. Bannister? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Attorney Phoenix, do you have any other presentation you would like to make?
I do not.
Okay. So we will open this up to the public. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone online? Okay. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to this petition? Okay, seeing no one rise and no one online. Last speakers, 2 for or against. No one is rising. So I'll close the public hearing. And I'd like to hear from the board. Mr. Rossi?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance request as presented and advertised.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Mattson, second. Your motion, Mr. Rossi?
Okay, my motion is to approve the variance request as presented and advertised with the stipulation that the easement and right-of-way will be finalized as a condition of approval. And I would say that with regard to the 5 criteria for approving a variance, the undergirding fact of the matter is that this is really just about taking an existing use in this building with no changes to the interior or exterior of the building and a minimal expansion. In fact, the way that the variance is worded, it is an expansion to 6 residents. It does not actually open the gateway for an infinite expansion into residential to a assisted living center, because it specifically says a center with 6 residents. So I'm fine with that. I don't find any need for further stipulation on the motion. And then when it comes to the criteria, the spirit of the ordinance being observed and the variance not being contrary to the public interest, clearly there is no public interest to be served by denying the expansion of this use. It's prima facie obvious on really all of these. Substantial justice will be done by granting the variance. There's no loss to the public to having an additional resident there. Most of the discussion in the presentation was about how the facility is run, which really is outside the jurisdiction of the board. The only thing that really concerns us is the use of the property, and this use is really a very minor change from the current use. Granting the variance will not diminish the surrounding property values. The property is already in use in this manner. There will be no conceivable way that it would diminish the values of surrounding properties by continuing this use and expanding it from 5 to 6 residents. And let's see, did I miss one? No fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance and its specific application in this instance. Clearly, it is not the purpose of the ordinance to create difficulties in providing care for individuals who need this type of care in this type of facility, and so there is absolutely no conflict with the public purposes of the ordinance. And that is my motion.
Does the second have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll just add, so, you know, obviously the ordinance needs to have a cutoff at some point, but the actual change from 5 to 6 residents without any physical external changes to the structure really is a minimal change, even though the category changes from assisted living, whatever, to center. And then, yeah, I mean, I agree that the additional stipulation of increasing numbers isn't really necessary, because they would need to come back before the board again, because it would be different than as advertised and presented. But if others would want that added, it's acceptable, but that's it.
Okay. Is there any discussion on the motion, Mr. Mantle?
Does Mr. Rossi's motion include the stipulation?
Yes, I would ask Mr. Rossi to restate the stipulation as it's stated on page 32 of our packet, just to make sure it covers everything that the planning board
Okay, you have
wants
to go
do.
back there. I just already changed the next one. Let's see. This was trying to get there. Just give me a second.
Page 32, if that helps.
Of our
Of the
packet?
packet.
Yeah, okay. Okay, the stipulation is the provision of an easement or right-of-way to the city for the portion of the road and/or future sidewalk on the parcel to connect to the public portion of Albany Street shall be reviewed and approved by the Planning and Legal Department and approved by the City Council as a condition of this approval.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is to approve the variance request as presented and advertised with the stipulation as just stated by Mr. Rossi, and I will start. Oh, sorry, Mr. Ram.
Yeah, I thought we were still taking board comment. Sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought we were done.
So I understand that there's been no stipulation made regarding the maximum number of residents being capped at 6. I get that it's kind of asking for belt and suspenders a bit for such a stipulation, but I do fear the assisted living center, as the acting chair has pointed out, has a very broad potential interpretation. And yeah, I agree that today's planning staff is probably kind of on top of this and would probably easily recognize that an expansion of any sort would require coming before the board again. That said, this variance runs with the land. It goes for a long period of time. I do think it is kind of essential, assuming that the definition of an assisted living center not changed, that it's really an essential element of why I would be okay with granting this variance, not just a special exception, but a variance for you. So I'm not comfortable with it without the stipulation being a maximum of 6 residents, just for that, you know, belt and suspenders, historical documentation.
Okay. Any other comments on the motion? Mr. Nees, you look like you want to say something.
Well, I want to say two things, okay? The first is, if the maker of the motion or the seconder don't want to add that stipulation for 6, I'd be willing to make a motion to amend to add the stipulation for 6. But I'll leave it up to them if they
I
want.
think it's illogical and unnecessary, but if that's what it takes to get the vote, I mean, it should be very straightforward. So if you guys want to complicate it, go ahead.
I'll make the stipulation that this variance request, as advertised and presented, was 6 is as the maximum for this assisted living center, and any future changes would require coming back before this board, if the maker of the motion was.
Well, I think the stipulation is that the residents shall be capped at 6. There is no further opportunity
Okay,
to
yes,
come back.
that's a simpler
No
way
more
to
than
say
6
it.
residents.
No more than 6, so.
Well put.
Okay, so I'm going to try this again. The motion is to approve the variance request as presented and advertised with 2 stipulations. One is that there'll be no more than 6 residents in the center, and the second is the site plan approval will include the condition of approval as read by Mr. Rossi and is contained on page 32 of our packet. Okay. Is everyone ready to vote? Okay, I'll start down here. Mr. Nees?
Yes.
Mr. Mannel?
Yes.
Mr. Rayum?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. You have your approval, 6-0. Okay, thank you. Now we will move on to new business. The first application under new business is Roman numeral A, under 3. The request of Timothy John Berkey, owner, for property located at 121 Eastwood Drive, whereas relief is needed to construct an accessory storage shed in the rear of the property, which requires the following. 1, a variance from section 10.573.20 to allow a 5-foot rear yard where 21 feet are required. Said property is located on Assessor Map 288, Lot 3-17, and lies within the Single Residence B District. May I ask who's here to speak to this application?
Timothy Berkey, Berky, 121 Eastwood Drive, Portsmouth. I'm the owner.
Okay, thank you. You'll have 15 minutes to make your presentation.
Good evening. I, Timothy Berkey, seek a variance from section 10.57320 to permit the construction of an accessory storage structure within the rear yard setback. Eastwood Drive is a private road located in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. The city of Portsmouth does not maintain Eastwood Drive, as it is not a public right-of-way. The neighborhood, for all intents and purposes, is a single house lot with 21 individual residential lots. As such, the road and all associated infrastructure are privately owned and maintained by the residents without municipal support or services related to road upkeep. Because of the unique layout and history of the subdivision, some of the lots on Eastwood Drive, my property included, face spatial constraints that do not align well with the city's current setback requirement. In my case, the shape and size of the lot, along with the placement of the primary residence and existing structure, present a practical hardship when it comes to sitting an accessory storage structure. The property has been my primary residence since 2014. It is in the SRB zone and consists of a single-family dwelling. The proposal is to construct an accessory storage structure with a second-story gym space. Electricity will be installed, however, this will not be a residential structure, and no plumbing will be going to the structure. The structure will never be turned into a residential structure, which is prohibited by Eastwood Drive bylaws. As a homeowner with a growing family of 2 kids, young children, I'm finding it increasingly difficult to manage the storage needs of our household. The amount of equipment, seasonal items, outdoor toys, and general household belongings has expanded significantly. Our current living space and existing storage options within the primary residence can no longer accommodate these necessities in an organized or safe manner. The lot is fairly small in comparison to most of the lots in the vicinity and sits landlocked between 2 abutting properties. The 2 abutting properties behind the property leaving for a small setback, small backyard section. Section 10.57320 provides that an accessory storage structure more than 10 feet in height or more than 100 square feet in area shall be set back from any lot line at least the height of the building or the applicable yard requirement, whichever is less. As proposed, the height of the structure is 21 feet to the ridge. The applicable rear yard setback in the SRB zone is 30 feet or the height of this building, which would be 21 feet as proposed. The accessory structure would be 5 feet from the rear lot line. Compliance with the required rear setback would prevent the structure from being built. The property most affected by this proposal is 111 Eastwood Drive. It has 2 smaller plastic sheds in a similar location on their property. The other abutting property, 131 Eastwood, has a wooden shed in a similar location on the property. The sheds the abutting properties have will not be affected in any way. The structure has been designed without windows on the abutting sides. There will be no privacy issues. The project and the property otherwise fully comply with all dimensional and land use requirements in the SRB zone. Criteria, I believe, within the application meets the criteria necessary for the board to grant the requested variance. The granting of the requested variance will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the ordinance, nor will be contrary to public interest. The public interest and spirit and intent requirements are considered together pursuant to Cali and Glenn Associates v. Chichester. The test of whether or not granting a variance would be contrary to public interest or contrary to the spirit and intent of the ordinance, as whether or not the variance being granted would substantially alter the characteristics of the neighborhood or threaten the health and safety of the welfare of the public. In this case, were the variance to be granted, there would be no change in essential characteristics of the neighborhood, nor would any public health, safety, or welfare be threatened. A proposed accessory storage structure on this property is entirely appropriate and consistent with the existing residential neighborhood in which it sits. The essential residential character of the neighborhood remain unchanged. Additionally, the proposed use would not create any threat to the public health, safety, and welfare. There remains adequate light, air, access, and distance between structures. Substantial justice would be done by granting the variance. Whether or not substantial justice will be done by granting the variance requires the board to conduct a balancing test. If the hardship upon the owner applicant outweighs any benefit to the general public in denying the variance, then substantial justice would be done by granting the variance. The project could not be constructed in compliance with the 21-foot rear yard setback. The only other option would be a large addition onto the existing structure. Addition would be, This addition would be within all setbacks and city requirements, but would cause the abutting property at 111 Eastwood to stare directly at the rear corner of the addition as they exit their residence. This loss for me outweighs any gain to the public if the variance is denied. The values of the surrounding properties will not be diminished by granting the variance. The project meets all dimensional requirements in the zone except for the rear yard setback. The immediate abutter has an accessory plastic storage shed at almost the exact same adjacent location on their lot, which has caused no negative impacts on property values in the neighborhood. This structure will be completed with the same detail and character as my existing home, and the values of the surrounding properties will not be negatively affected in any way. There are special conditions associated with the property which prevent the proper enjoyment of the property under the strict terms of the zoning ordinance, thus can constitute unnecessary hardship. The property is a smaller lot with 2 abutting properties which also abut behind this property. An accessory structure cannot be built in the front of the residence where most of the yard space is. The backyard is much smaller, which limits the building envelope available to me. The pre-existing build envelope on the lot prevents building the proposed accessory structure in compliance with the rear yard setback. The use is reasonable. The proposed accessory use is similar in character with the existing residential structure and consistent with the existing use of adjacent and abutting properties of those within the neighborhood. Accessory uses are permitted by right. There is no fair and substantial relationship between the purpose of the ordinance as it applied to this particular property. The purpose of setback requirements is to ensure many properties are developed with adequate light, air access, and building separation. Many, if not all, those concerns would be frustrated if I were forced to comply with the ordinance and build an addition off the primary residence. This proposed project would also be under approximately 7 large trees, which already dictate adequate light, air, and access and building separation. There is no fair and substantial relationship between the purpose of the rear yard side setback and requirements application to this property. For the foregoing reasons, I, Timothy Berkey, respectfully request the board grant the variance as requested and advertised.
Thank you, Mr. Berkey. Are there any questions for the applicant? Mr. Rio?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So taking a look at some of the photos that you provided us, in particular the one that's on page 88 of our packet, kind of shows that back corner. And that is your proposed location for this shed structure. I'm just curious, there seems to be like quite a bit of topography also going on with your property, like to the left-hand side of the photo, seems like the land is sloping down. Nearer to the front of the photo, you got, quite a bit of ledge that's going on there, and then you kind of have like a higher step. I'm just curious, what aspects of the topography are also driving your location for your shed and maybe pushing it closer to that back property line?
Yeah, so as you can see, that's all ledge over there. So if I was forced to have to come forward, that would require blasting or a excavator to have to go in there and start hammering out ledge, or else that would require a significant concrete wall to come up to match the ledge that's already there. So you would have in the backyard a potential of a 4+ foot, 5 foot concrete wall that's exposed from the ground up, which I think is doesn't really do anything for our backyard. That would hurt everybody, I think, having to look at that. So I think and when I bought the residence, the steps have changed. That was just a slope when we did some landscaping. But that area has been untouched, other than some stone put on top, since I've owned the residence in 2014.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Rossi?
Why is the shed so tall? Why 21 feet?
The first floor would be for storage. As you can see, that lawnmower right there is a little large, so it would go in there. And then the second floor would be for a gym. I'm required for my job to maintain a level of physical fitness, so I'm trying to squeeze a second floor to have a gym in there. It's currently not in a great place now with my children. I'm trying to get, would rather not have them near any equipment, anything like that. So being able to get that out of the house in a safe spot away from them would be very beneficial to my family.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
I did have one of the members of the street was unable to make it. They did leave me a letter, and I asked if it could be submitted, but I was told it just needs to be read. Is that something? It's a new letter that I was just given right before arriving. Sorry.
You can submit it as a comment, actually.
Okay.
You could just bring it right up here too. Why don't we start with Mr. Nees, and he can read it and then pass it down.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, that's being done. I will ask, is there any members of the public here who would like to speak in favor of this application? Are there any members who would like to speak in opposition to this application? And anyone who would like to speak to?
Hold on.
Oh,
Beth.
sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. Could you please come to the podium and state your name and what your position is?
My name is Lisa Arvidsson. I live at the 131 Eastwood Drive residence.
My name is Dwight Arvidsson, Arvidsson. I'm her husband, and we are abutters of said property.
And what is your position?
We are against it. Our backyard where we dwell, we spent many decades gardening. Our backyard has become a retreat, and since they have been working on their construction of their house for over 5 years, it has been a great source of stress. It has taken away privacy. It has taken away sunlight so that it's hard for us to grow anything in the back to give us more privacy from their property. And now this 21-foot story mini house that they want to put on the property is going to take away any remaining sunlight we have, which will affect our property. It will affect our yard. It will give us an even bigger eyesore to look at. And on top of that, we will have to go through a much longer process of construction with them when we just thought we had ended one. I think it's important to know that a year ago, our neighborhood association had to give them tell them that would have a lien on them by the beginning of this year if they didn't finish up their construction. So there's just more stress and more lowering the value, and it makes our backyard and our piece less enjoyable for our home that we've lived in for decades.
And again, just to speak to the 21-foot elevation, the pad that they are planning to build this on is 4 feet above grade anyway, so the actual is going to be 25 feet. We all have garden sheds in our neighborhood for storage. That's fine. The fact that he's claiming hardship, they just went through a 5-year renovation of their house. Yes, they have 2 kids. Should have been planned for. They have a huge playground in their backyard, which again is small. It's the smallest lot in the neighborhood. They knew what they were getting into. Mr. Berkey has lived in the neighborhood his whole life. He knew what he was getting into. And to ask for such a variance when it is going to affect, it is right in our backyard. Wants to put up a little storage shed, we've all got one, I don't have a problem with that. But a monstrosity like that, I don't see the need. He needs a gym, there's Planet Fitness right up the road. All I want to say.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to this application? And please state your name and state your address, please.
Hi, I'm Pierre Brazeau, Brazeau, 111 Eastwood Drive in a butter. And I'm in opposition as written. I have no problem with the shed, single story, understand. I don't see the need for a 2-story shed with a gym. If you look at the layout, there are 3 windows that would face the side of our house, which would look into our living room, our sunroom, and would, given the elevation of it being on the 2nd story and the added 4 feet rise in elevation, would overlook the backyard as well. So I think it would impact privacy issues. I think it would potentially impact future property values. I understand his situation. I feel for him. I'm not against having additional storage. As the other abutter had indicated, they had that opportunity in their original modifications to the house, and they, of course, were aware of the property they purchased. But I just want to go on record. I'm not against them having a storage facility that's commensurate with the feeling of the neighborhood as it exists today. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who would like to speak to, for, or against this application? Okay, is there anyone online, Steph? Okay, so with that, I'll close the public hearing and open it to the board's consideration. Mr. Mattson?
Share some thoughts. So I guess my first thought is I do question the hardship for the need of a 2-floor structure, but the variance isn't actually for the structure, and 21 feet does seem high, but that's to the ridge, and the way we define our building height is half of the height of the plane. But even at 21 feet, it wouldn't require it. But I do share the thought that I'm not sure that there's a hardship. It is true that this oddly shaped lot with an 111 property surrounding it from the backside is a little bit unusual, and the house exists where it does. So pretty much any like a 1-story shed there would still need this variance. I do think that it's not exactly part of our criteria, but I think this looks like a very tastefully done property, so I wouldn't have concerns about this being a poorly constructed shed. Yeah, so I guess it's a little bit of a mixed bag.
Mr. Rossi?
I do think the 21-foot height is relevant because the way the ordinance is written, it dictates the required distance from the property line, and a 1-story shed would be less non-conforming and would not require as much of a degree of in that variance, if I'm not mistaken. Is that not correct, Stephanie?
That's true.
That is true, correct?
Can you say that one more time? I was having trouble following, but
The
Mr.
21
Mattson seems-
foot.
It needs to be further from the line because it's taller. So
Yes.
even though there's not a variance for the height, it affects the
And
setback.
it affects the magnitude of the non-conformance with regard to setback.
Right. So if it was, there's a tipping point. If it's over a certain square foot, over a certain height, it has to be farther from the lot line.
If
Correct.
it's over 100 square feet, and then you have to use the height to judge the setback.
Right. Or the required setback, whatever's less.
And I think, the discussion of the topography that Mr. Rayoon led is relevant because not only do you have the height of the building, but you've got the elevated position on the land. So I would not be in favor of this, of granting this variance, and I would be prepared to make a motion to that effect, but I'd like to give the rest of the board a chance to comment before I do that.
Yes. Any questions or comments from this side of the board? Mr. Nees, Mr. Mennel? Nothing? Mr. Ryu, I see that hand going up.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So, I am kind of sort of torn about this. We do have, I understand that the two closest abutters, the applicant has, presented information from some other members of the journal community, but the two closest abutters were the ones who came up and spoke in opposition. The application is meeting the side yard setback of 10 feet that's required here, allowed here, which admittedly is closer than the back allowance, but it is what's allowed per the ordinance. So really, the property, as you're looking at the property to the right-hand side, it is being the proper respect from that property line. It's really the back property line, which it's kind of unusual. I think if the house on the neighboring property on the left-hand side was situated more in line with the applicant's own home, that, the positioning here would probably be a lot less relevant. Yeah, admittedly, the applicant owns that property back there, but all this whole neighborhood sort of backs up on a municipal, natural resources kind of area that's not developed. The applicant could, by right, with the recent change made to our zoning ordinance, if it's a single-story shed with 120 square feet or less, there are now no setback requirements whatsoever for a shed. So, a smaller structure could be placed there without any kind of an issue. It's really adding the second story for the gym that is kind of driving this concern relative to the back property line. There's enough use of that by the neighboring property, and I can understand that their house comes up pretty close to the property line. Not sure how that ended up being the case, but with that, I can see where they would have more of a view of this than they would if their home was closer to the road, which, because of the narrowness of the front portion of their lot, is not realistic. So I'm torn. Still not 100% sure which way I would go with this, but those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Motion?
Oh, yes, that's my cue.
Well, I'm not sure the board has really come to any kind of informal consensus, but perhaps it is appropriate to have a motion now.
Call the question. My motion would be to deny the variance as presented and advertised.
Is there a second for that? There is no second.
Well, I guess that calls the question.
I'll second for discussion purposes.
Okay, maker of the motion, please state why.
Okay, in order to deny a request for a variance, it is only necessary that one criterion fails. In this case, I will go to the hardship criterion. I do think that there is a relationship between the purpose of the ordinance and the unsuitability of the height of the shed, which is what drives the need for as much relief as is requested to the back lot line. We are trying to preserve light and air for neighboring properties. Concerns have been expressed about that. This particular second story really pushes it outside of what the ordinance is trying to achieve with keeping open space where needed. And particularly, this is exacerbated by, unfortunately, the special condition of the property being that that particular spot is elevated in topography, making the second floor even a little bit more egregious than it might otherwise be in terms of blocking light and air. And that is my motion.
Does the second have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I do kind of agree that if this fails, it really does sort of fail on the hardship criteria. A two-story shed is an unusual request. I understand the applicant's desire for the second-story gym, but that is something that more typically is seen in a main house structure, and really sort of drives this into a higher level of concern relative to some of the similar sheds in the. It does appear like there are other sheds in the neighborhood. Just doing a quick check here. And we know that the rear, as the applicant has indicated, the abutter to the right-hand side left-hand side does have sheds in the rear of their property, but, smaller, one-story. And again, by right, the applicant could create a one-story shed of 120 square feet and have no restrictions with regards to setbacks. So I do think that the additional hardship just is not there with the property.
Okay, thank you. So any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none. So the motion is to deny the variance as presented and advertised, and I will start with Mr. Mattson.
I've been convinced, yes.
Yes. Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Mr. Rayam?
Yes.
Mr. Mannel?
No.
Mr. Nees?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. I'm sorry, you're denied. The final vote being 5 to 1 to deny. Okay, thank you. We will move on to the next topic of business, which is the B, the request of Paul and Carolina Roggenbach, I hope I said that right, for property located at 2 Sylvester Street, whereas relief is needed to construct a detached garage with accessory dwelling unit, which requires the following. 1, a variance from section 10.1114.31 to allow a second driveway where only one is permitted. Said property is located on Accessor Map 232, Lot 35, and lies within the Single Residence B District. And prior to hearing the application, I think we have to decide whether or not Fisher v. Dover applies to it. There is some discussion of this in our packet. The applicants were here on April 22nd, seeking relief for one freestanding dwelling unit on a lot and to allow the second driveway on the lot. This is all set out in the packet at page 92. And we denied the request for the relief at the time, citing there was no special characteristic of the property that said it could not be used in a reasonable and conforming manner. So it failed the hardship criterion, and the request was not consistent with the spirit of the ordinance. This is not for a freestanding dwelling. This is for a detached ADU and a second driveway to service the detached ADU. The only part of this application, as I read it, that is the same as the last application is the driveway, the second driveway. So just would like to open it up to the board. Mr. Nees?
I don't believe Fisher v. Dover applies in this instance. This is a significant change in the project. It may not appear that way, but it is a detached ADU, I think, which is allowed by right. There's been a change in the statute since, I think, our last hearing that allowed that. In addition to that, I think during our discussion the last time, many of us commented that a detached ADU would be permissible. So the applicant has in some respects changed the application to meet some of the comments that we made. I think there was a case with Rye that points out that sort of negates the applicability of Fisher v. Dover when they try and address the board's concerns, at least in this instance. So my opinion is Fisher v. Dover does not apply.
Okay. And any other comments, Mr. Rayam?
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree. I do not think Fisher v. Dover applies as well. I think the real emphasis of the board's concerns, and the emphasis of the denial was with the, second dwelling unit that was of greater size than allowed as an accessory dwelling unit. I think the driveway kind of got carried along with that, simply because if that wasn't going to be allowed, then there was really no need to allow a second driveway to nothing. So I think the application as a whole was really centered around that second dwelling structure. So I do think that this now represents a fresh approach, and that maybe we would consider the driveway acceptable or maybe not, but it deserves to be heard.
Okay. Any other comments from any other board members? Yeah, I do not think we need a vote on this. I think the consensus of the board is that Fisher v. Dover does not apply to your application, so therefore we will ask you to proceed with your application's merits. Thank you.
My name is Carolina Roggenbuck, Roggenbuck, and I'm here with my husband Paul to request a variance, as you mentioned, from section 10.1114.31 driveways to construct a second driveway to serve a proposed detached accessory dwelling unit on our property. As you mentioned, we were here before, we had a much larger dwelling, and so we kind of misunderstood some of the rules and such. So we have now submitted a new project. The DADU is within all size parameters that are specified in the ordinance. It does not exceed any of the square footage, the perimeter, or the height. So the only variance that we would need is the driveway, because and I will explain why. The additional driveway would be approximately 16 feet wide by 20.5 feet long or so, and be constructed from permeable grass pavers. We understand that Portsmouth zoning ordinance typically limits properties to a single driveway. However, we believe our property's unique circumstance and the need for safe, practical access to the DADU warrant granting the variance. We carefully considered each of the 5 criteria for a variance, and we respectfully submit the following for your consideration. Literal enforcement of the ordinance's single driver provision would create an unnecessary hardship for our property. This hardship is not self-created, but stems from the layout and the practical limitations of our site. The first one would be loss of primary owner parking. Our current driveway, if we were somehow to use that with the ADU, it's located to the right of our property between our primary residence and where the proposed DADU would stand. It adequately accommodates parking for us for 2 to 3 cars. If the existing driveway were also to somehow serve as a driveway for the DADU garage, that would result in significant loss of essential parking for us. It would leave us only with 1 spot. We have 2 cars, we have a small child. That would mean we'd have to search for parking on another street, because the street is so narrow, it doesn't allow for on-street parking anywhere. So that would create a practical living situation for us, as well as potentially unsafe parking situations. The other one is a unsafe turning radius from the garage. We've considered having a side driveway into this DADU, but that we consulted with our architect, and that would mean that our driveway would actually need to be widened. The width of the current driveway in the back, toward the narrow end, where the DADU would stand, is approximately 18 feet. Based on the information from our architect, to reverse out of that driveway and then turn over into the street, it would need a minimum of about 26 feet. That would require widening our driveway at least another 8 feet. It would also require moving the DADU much closer to the street, to a front setback of about 10 feet, and attempting to move multiple vehicles in such proximity would create significant safety hazards, including an increased collision risk, property damage, and danger to pedestrians. The angles and the limited space just do not allow for necessary clearances for safe vehicle operation for both units simultaneously, and that still goes back to the same hardship of just leaving us with a single parking spot for 2 cars. To lessen any impact on the drainage, we are proposing to build the driveway from for the DADU using permeable grass paver system. We will also be decreasing the width of our existing driveway from the primary residence from approximately 30 feet to about 24 feet wide. The distance between the two driveways would then be approximately 30 feet, which we will plant with grass and other plants. Number two, the variance will not be contrary to the public interest. We're confident that the variance will not be contrary. In fact, it will enhance safety of our property by preventing potential conflicts and dangerous maneuvers that would arise from a shared constrained driveway. The new driveway will be designed with clear sight lines, ensuring safe ingress and egress for all users and minimizing any impact on pedestrian or vehicular traffic on the public way. Number three, the spirit of the ordinance will be observed. Granting the variance will observe the spirit of the ordinance. The DADU itself aligns with the city's goals of increasing diverse housing options and promoting sustainable growth. By providing a dedicated safe access point, we are ensuring that the DADU can function effectively without negatively impacting the existing primary residence or the surrounding neighborhood's character. Our proposed design for the second driveway will be a modestly sized, approximately 16 feet wide, and be built from permeable grass pavers, maintaining residential feel of the area. Variance from this section would be consistent with the neighborhood, as many of the adjacent and neighboring lots are smaller and have multiple driveways for single dwellings and accessory dwellings. Number four, the values of the surrounding properties will not be diminished. We are confident that the proposed second driveway will not diminish the values. We are committed to constructing the driveway with high quality, aesthetically appropriate materials that complement the neighborhood's existing character. To decrease impact on drainage, as I mentioned, we want to use permeable grass pavers. The primary goal is to enhance the functionality and safety of our property, which in turn contributes to its overall value without negatively impacting our neighbors. And finally, substantial justice will be done. Granting this variance will ensure substantial justice will be done. It allows us to make reasonable and safe use of our property by fully utilizing the permitted DADU. Without this variance, the practical limitation of the existing driveway would significantly impede the functionality and safety of both the primary residents of the DADU. This variance provides an equitable solution balancing the goals of the zoning ordinance with the practical realities of our property. Granting the variance for a second driveway would be just in that adjacent properties are much smaller and some have second driveways for our singular dwelling or an accessory dwelling. It would have no significant adverse impact on any neighbor, and there's no harm to the general public. The variance would allow us reasonable and fair use of the property, as has been allowed to other residents of Sylvester Street and the adjacent properties on Marjorie Street. The adjacent property at 6 Sylvester Street, which is our neighbor to our right, if you're looking at the house, has a second driveway for their DADU at 4 Sylvester Street. The neighbor property at 3 Sylvester Street has 2 driveways. They have a semicircle driveway with 2 curb cuts as 2 access points. The property across the street at 1 Sylvester Street has a single very wide and deep driveway, allowing them to park multiple cars. And the property adjacent to our backyard at 610 Middle Road has 2 driveways for a single residence, which is about 1/3 the size of our property. Granting the variance for a second driveway for a property which has a total street frontage of approximately 277 feet would allow us the same use of the property which has been allowed to the neighbors. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Rogenbach. Is there anybody who has any questions for the applicant? Nothing, thank you. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to it? No one online? And is there finally anyone who would like to speak to, for, or against? Thank you. With that, I'll close the public hearing and open it to discussion by the board. Mr. Rossi?
I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the variance application as presented and advertised.
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Rossi, your motion, please.
Well, my motion is to approve the application as presented and advertised. The accessory dwelling unit is allowed by right. The location of the accessory dwelling unit requires no variances, so it is allowed by right to be in that particular location. I do think this is an interesting early case for us to understand that as more accessory dwelling units are permitted, we do have to consider how people will actually get to and from them. In this case, having a second driveway to access the accessory dwelling unit in its rightful location is logical. The denial of a variance to allow that would be completely irrational and would contravene the intent of allowing a detached accessory dwelling unit. So literal enforcement of the driveway provision would, let's see if can I have your cheat sheet?
Yep.
These are not in the order I'd like to do them. Thanks. Variance is not contrary to the public interest and the spirit of the ordinance observed. Again, the spirit of the ordinance now is that we would be promoting the use of accessory dwelling units, and this is a necessary part of allowing that to happen, and therefore the spirit of the ordinance is observed. Substantial justice is done. There's no loss to the general public by allowing this driveway to go into place. The values of the surrounding properties are not diminished, as the applicant pointed out. Many of the surrounding properties and nearby properties already have second driveways. This would not be out of character with the neighborhood. I also particularly appreciate the use of the grass permeable pavers. I think that's a really a great idea, and the overall effect between using those pavers and narrowing the existing driveway actually decreases the impermeable surface, and could argue that that is a benefit to the surrounding properties as well. Literal enforcement of the ordinance will result in unnecessary hardship. The special condition of the property, distinguish it from other properties. I would say that the special condition is that we now have an accessory dwelling unit on there by right, and that is the condition that drives the need for this variance in order to make reasonable use of that accessory dwelling unit. And that is my, that's the total of my motion.
Anything for the second, Mr. Rayo?
Yeah, I'll just sort of add to my idea for the hardship criteria, what's different about this property. It is an unusually long piece of property. It's really multiple lots that would have been originally sold individually that had all been put together. It's a little unfortunate, really what our ordinance is trying to do is two things. One is trying to, not have like a rhythm of just, driveway upon driveway upon driveway, but sort of to spread that out. The other is, backing out in and out and trying to reduce the number of entry points onto a street. I do think with this exceptionally long property, admittedly the next property down is about the same length, but as the applicant has indicated, they also have two driveways. So I think that also drives, sorry, probably shouldn't use that word, also lends itself to saying that there is a hardship here, and that the extra driveway won't look completely out of place. It's a little unfortunate that the existing driveway is on the same side of the house as where the accessory dwelling unit is going to be located, but at the same point in time, the rhythm overall is such that, over such a long span, you're not going to have like a lot of driveways going in. And the applicant is allowed to put a garage, so long as the accessory dwelling unit does not exceed, a certain size overall, and the applicant's taking advantage of that, to make this a more amenable, living situation. And with that, as Mr. Rossi points out, you kind of need a driveway to get there. So I think it's reasonable, and I think that that's an additional special condition to the property.
Okay, thank you. Are there, Mr. Nees?
Yeah, we did get one comment letter opposing the variance, but I think it's important to note that the only variance that's needed is for the driveway. Many of the comments that were made oppose the idea of an accessory dwelling unit, a detached accessory dwelling unit, which the applicant is allowed by right. And so I think that this clearly is a pretty minor variance in order to make it a better use of the accessory dwelling unit.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussions? Ready for a vote? Okay, so the motion is to approve the variance application as presented and advertised. Mr. Nees?
Yes.
Mr. Mannel?
Yes.
Mr. Ram?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
And the acting chair votes yes. You have your approval. Thank you. I don't know where she is. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Are we taking a break anytime soon, or is
It's
it
only
too early?
8:15,
It's only 8:15? Okay,
Yes.
sorry.
so we're gonna plow through.
Urgent medical need?
No, I'm still at a sink. I spent a week up in Nova Scotia, so I'm in a different time
We have
zone.
5 more applications. Probably we'll take a break if needed prior to 9 o'clock. The next item of business is the request of 909 West End LLC owner and Loaded Question Brewing applicant for property located at 909 Islington Street, whereas relief is needed to add 300 square feet of space to increase seating capacity from 36 to 54, which requires the following. 1, a special exception from section 10.440, use number 9.42, to allow occupant load from 50 to 250. Said property is located on Assessor Map 172, Lot 7, and lies within the Character District 4W zone. And who is here to speak to this application? If you could please identify yourself.
Yes, Tom Bath, B-A-T-H, and I live on 30 Sheffield Road in Portsmouth.
Okay, thank you.
I'll try and keep it fairly brief. You guys are plugging along better than I would. As said, I'm the owner of Loaded Question Brewing Company, or one of the co-owners, and the brewer, and we are seeking relief to add 300 square feet of space to our restaurant to increase our capacity up to 54. Right now, you're limited to 50, and we can go up to 250 if we meet the requirements of, if I understand correctly, 10, 232, 30. There's a couple different things that we have to meet there. One is, will there be a hazard to the change of the public or the property from fire, explosions, or release of toxic chemicals? We're not doing anything that changes our current operations. Fire department has looked at our operations. We're considered safe, and that's not going to change at all. There's questions about whether it'll change any of the essential characteristics about the neighborhood, including additional odor, smoke, gas, dust, pollutants, noise, heat, those, et cetera, et cetera. Again, we're not changing any of our operations, so that will not change at all. There's a question about whether it will have any impact on traffic, safety, or congestion. I'm not sure if you're exactly aware of where we are, but we're recessed off of Islington Street, kind of behind what was the Ampet Gas. We're in the same building where Louis is going in. I'm assuming they just went through the same process for the same exemption. And because we're recessed pretty far off the road, I don't anticipate it affecting those at all. In terms of affecting any the municipal services, water, sewer, waste disposal, et cetera, again, we're not changing really any of our operations. A few additional customers should not affect this significantly. And then there's some questions about permeable surface and stormwater is one of the criteria we need to meet. Again, we are not changing anything outside of the building. We're adding the additional square footage by pushing into an adjacent existing space, and so that's not going to affect the permeability. And it shouldn't have any effect on the desirability of the neighborhood or property values. Again, it's all indoors. With that said, I'm seeking a special exemption to that. So, kept it pretty short for you.
Any questions from the board? Mr. Nees?
I guess I'm struggling to understand exactly what is changing here from your drawings.
So the gray part up there is, so the top goes towards Islington Street. The bottom is the patio, which backs up against those railroad tracks. The gray space is what we're proposing adding to the space. So that's really the only change. We're going to build the wall 10 feet behind the existing wall and then demo that one. So.
Okay. Thank you, I think.
Any additional questions? I actually have a question. So just trying to make the numbers work. So it looks like you're adding 24 additional seats, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it's going from 36 to 54.
That's
Where are
correct.
you taking away other seats?
Let me look at the,
In the top left,
Yeah.
the outdoor seating is reduced.
yep, there.
But I'm actually comparing indoor to indoor.
So indoor to indoor, we're going from 36 seats indoor to 54 seats indoor.
I think 36 plus 24 is 60.
So where did it say 24 seats?
I'm just looking at.
Oh, looking at the drawing.
Yeah, the drawing.
So I know exactly. So where the dashed red line is, there are currently some seats up against the wall right there that are disappearing.
Okay.
Now it makes sense.
Okay.
I should have drawn in the things that were disappearing.
Okay. Thank you. I thought I was losing my mind.
Nope.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to this petition? And is there anyone who would like to speak to, for, or against? Seeing no one rise and there's nobody online, I'll close the public hearing.
Madam Chair?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I have a question.
Oh, okay.
For
I will-
staff?
I will not close the public hearing yet.
You can close it. January 28th, 2025, the board granted the request to allow a restaurant which requires the following: special exception from the same to allow a restaurant with an occupant load of 50 to 250.
That was for the Louis.
That was for the what?
That was for Louis, the other restaurant on the property.
The same address.
Same address, but different part of the building.
Oh.
I see how that is confusing.
I got to clear that up in the public
Okay,
meeting.
fine.
I
It
thought
wasn't
that was
specified in the
confusing,
packet,
too.
so.
Because it's the
Oh,
same,
well.
it's the same address, so.
Yep.
Okay. Are there any other questions before I close the public hearing? Okay. Public hearing is closed, and I'll open it to the board's discussion.
I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the special exception as presented and advertised.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Mattson?
Okay, so basically this is a minor change to an existing use that drives this request for special exception. The standards are permitted by special exception, so that criterion is satisfied. No hazard to the public or adjacent property on account of potential fire, etc. This use is the same as the use that is currently being done on this site in this particular building. So there is no increase in any of those hazards. No detriment to property values in the vicinity. This use is consistent with what's already going on in the general vicinity and won't change the property values in any way. No creation of a traffic safety hazard. I would argue that the traffic in and out of the facility is consistent with what is already going on in the general vicinity, will not add additional significant congestion. No excessive demand on municipal services. Again, this is a use that's already occurring on the site in this particular location and others, and we will not be presenting any new demands on municipal services. No significant increase of stormwater runoff. Same thing, the building footprint is not changing that much, and I don't see that as a runoff problem here. The conditional use permit for parking, we don't need a stipulation for that. That's automatically required, correct?
I should clarify, so a little bit of backstory. The planning board approved a conditional use permit when the Louis restaurant went through their approval process, and they gave values to the vacant spaces in the building. This space is that they're expanding into is permitted, or I'm sorry, was approved through the conditional use permit process for a personal services use. If a personal service goes in there, they will need an amended conditional use permit, but as of right now, it's still vacant, so we're not requiring they go through that process at the
So
moment.
no stipulation is needed.
No stipulation.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's it. That's the totality of my motion.
Mr. Masson, anything for your second?
Yeah, I'll just add, this is a similar situation where we need to, at some point, you have to pick a number to have a cutoff where it goes from a lower use to a higher use, and this one happened to be 50. But as Mr. Rossi has stated, I think this minimal increase in square footage inside the existing building being attributed to this restaurant versus the neighboring vacant future tenant, it just makes a lot of sense to grant this special exception.
Okay, thank you. Any discussions on the motion? Okay. We'll take a vote. The motion is to approve the special exception as presented and advertised. Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Mr. Rayam?
Yes.
Mr. Mannel?
Yes.
Mr. Nees?
Yes.
And the acting chair votes yes. The approval has been granted. Thank you. Okay. We'll move on to, I'm going to suggest doing 2 more applications before we take our break, if that's okay with you, Mr. Rossi.
Sure, of course.
So our next order of business is under new business D. Request of 145 Maplewood Avenue LLC owner and Fuel Personal Training applicant for property located at 145 Maplewood Avenue, whereas relief is needed to establish a health club with 2,500 square feet of gross floor area, which requires the following. 1, a special exception from section 10.440, use number 4.42, to allow a health club, yoga studio, martial arts school, or similar use with more than 2,000 square foot gross foot area. Gross floor area. Said property is located on Assessor Map 124, Lot 8-1, and lies within the Character District 5 and Downtown Overlay Districts. Who is here to speak to this application? Could you please identify yourself and say where you're from, please?
Yeah, I'm Matt Skeffington, Skeffington, from Auburn, New Hampshire, 119 Haven Drive.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we're located in Bedford, New Hampshire now. We have our single location. I've been in the industry for 15 years. I had a gym in Nashua that I bought in 2014, and it was a failing business that we grew from 80 members to 800 members in 8 years, and ended up selling the business. It was a really good opportunity, and Fuel is the evolution of what we did there. We do small group personal training, so we train people over the age of 45, and we've blended the worlds of personal training. So personal training, you would hire a coach, a trainer. It's great coaching. It's great structure. They show you what to do and how to do it, keep you accountable. The downside is expensive, and it lacks a little bit of motivation and energy that a group fitness can bring. Group fitness, on the other end, is really high energy. It's great community, but it lacks the personalization. It's usually one coach coaching 20 or 30 people, so we've blended the two worlds. We have sessions no more than 8, so that we can, once you hit 40, things start changing, and you got aches and pains, you got injuries, you might be new to fitness, so that we can have a coach right with you. We show you exactly what to do and how to do it. We tailor the exercises to your fitness level, to your injury history, but we do it in a small group. So we have sessions of 8, which makes it very enjoyable. You get to know the people. It brings a lot of fun to your fitness. So for us, we're not, our members aren't people who are fitness fanatics. They are, I need to get started. I need to get in shape. I want to feel better. I want to have more energy. So Fuel's the place to get going. We have strength training, mobility, cardio, and again, we show you all what to do, tailor it to you, and we do it in a really fun environment and a nice small group. So we're looking to go into space at 145 Maplewood, and in terms of the build out, pretty simple. It's a big open box that we like open space, so we can do functional movement. So half of our gym will be turf. We'll have a lobby. The other half will be the rubber floor. We'll house all of our strength equipment. But other than the lobby and the flooring, the rest is just fitness equipment. So really simple build out that doesn't need any, anything crazy. And then in terms of our, special exceptions for this, there's no hazard to the public or adjacent properties. There's no flammable toxic materials used on site. Equipment is just our standard fitness gear. No detriment property to values or change. It's operating a very high-end, clean, professional, well-maintained building, brand new construction that really meets our brand aesthetic. We want the highest quality coaching. We want the highest quality equipment and facility, and the building is just a perfect space for, how we operate. So no odor, no dust, smoke, other pollutants are produced, and it's in harmony with other existing commercial activity that's in that area. The facility schedules small group classes, so in terms of no creation of traffic, we only have 8 per session, so there's not going to be crazy traffic, and avoids congestion. There's sufficient off-street parking and clear access for vehicles and pedestrians. It will not create excessive demand for municipal services. Water and sewage are minimal and comparable to other businesses. It does not impact school enrollment, the need for police or fire services. And then finally, there's no changes to the building or the footprint. The building's already there and ready to rock and roll. It's just now we just, do our small build out and hopefully open here in the new year.
Did you address stormwater runoff? I'm not sure. I kind of lost. The last criteria is number 6.
Yep, no proposed changes to the building footprint. Therefore, there will be no increase to stormwater runoff to adjacent properties or the public right-of-way.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant? Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
So we'll open this up to the public now. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this application? If you could just please identify yourself.
Abigail Bachman, B-A-C-H-M-A-N, with Colliers, a commercial real estate brokerage in Portsmouth located at 210 Commerce Way. I have acted as Matt's broker throughout this transaction. I just want to speak to his character and to his business. I think it's a phenomenal amenity to this building as well as to the downtown area to add to the existing fitness uses that are there now. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this application? There's no one online. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? And is there anyone who would like to speak to, for, or against? And seeing no one rise, I will close the public hearing and open it up to consideration by the board. Board? Mr. Neese?
I'm prepared to make a motion if there's no further discussion.
Your motion? Do we have a second?
I haven't made it yet. Sorry. I move to grant the special exception as presented and advertised.
Second. Mr. Mantle?
Going through the criteria, I think this will be pretty straightforward. The standards as provided by the ordinance. This is a use that's allowed in this area by a special exception. There's no other criteria that need to be met. There's no hazard to the public. There will be no fire, no potential fire other than the normal fire potential of the building, no explosions or release of toxic material. There's no evidence that there'll be any detriment to property values in the vicinity or change in the essential characteristics that's going into an existing building. There's no changes to the external features, so it's not going to do that. There's no evidence that there'll be any creation of a traffic hazard. It's a relatively small training group at any one time. This, at least when the bridge is done, this is a major thoroughfare into Portsmouth, and so it's unlikely that 8 participants at any one time are going to significantly affect the traffic in the area. There will be no excessive demand on municipal services, no impact on the police, fire protection, schools. This building's already serviced by water, sewer, and waste disposal, so it's not changing anything there. And because it's an existing building and the lot has already been built in a way that handles stormwater runoff under adjacent property or streets, and there's no physical changes to the building, it will have no impact on stormwater runoff. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anything from the second, Mr. Mantle?
No, that was complete.
Okay. So any discussion on the motion? Nothing? Okay. So the motion is to approve the special exception as presented and advertised. And Mr. Nees, I'll start with you.
Yes.
Mr. Mennel?
Yes.
Mr. Ram?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
And the acting chair votes yes. You have your approval. Thank you. 6-0. Okay. And the next application, the last one before we take a break for purposes of Mr. Rossi, is E, under new business. The request of Mark N. and Julie S. Franklin, owners, for property located at 168 Lincoln Avenue, whereas relief is needed to demolish the rear deck and construct a one-story addition, demolish and reconstruct the front porch, construct a kitchen addition, construct a bulkhead, and construct dormers, which require the following. 1, a variance from section 10.521 to allow a 7.5-foot front yard where 15 feet are required, B, a 7-foot right yard where 10 feet are required, and C, 32% building coverage where 25% is maximum allowed. And second variance from section 10.321 to allow a nonconforming building or structure to be extended, reconstructed, or enlarged without conforming to the requirements of the ordinance. Said property is located on Assessor Map 113, Lot 6, and lies within the General Residence A District. And who is here to speak to this application?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. For the record, I am Derek Durbin. I am representing Mark and Julie Franklin, owners of the property that's before you tonight. I also have Hubert Craw with me, who's the architect that's worked on the redesign plans and renovation plans for the house. So some of you at least were on the board in December 2023. We presented an application to you at that time for this property. Ultimately, the variances were approved for that. At that time, we were proposing to demolish the existing detached garage on the property, also the non-conforming rear deck, and construct an attached garage addition with 2 stories of living space above it to the house. As part of the proposed renovation, we were also going to remove and replace the front porch, a slightly smaller front porch than what exists, as well as construct a bulkhead where there's an existing set of sunken stairs. But because that is, or at least a portion of it is more than 18 inches above grade, a variance is required for that, which was approved at the time. That renovation proved to be too costly, in large part due to some of the structural concerns that arose at the time, and also just costs have risen. So with that said, the Franklins are back before you with somewhat of a redesign of what they previously proposed. They intend to keep the existing detached garage. They would be removing the non-conforming rear deck, replacing that with a small addition to the house for a mudroom and some office space. They would also be replacing the front porch in kind, the bulkhead that was previously proposed, and perhaps that doesn't, well, it does need to be part of this because of the building coverage relief. That is proposed exactly the same as it was before. The redesign does result in less building coverage than what was previously proposed. In terms of setback relief being sought, nothing materially has changed in that respect. So with that said, I turn to the variance criteria unless anybody had any questions they wanted to ask right now.
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, great. Granting the variances will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the zoning ordinance or the public interest. The plans call for the Franklins to actually reduce building coverage by 1.7% from what exists, so therefore there wouldn't be any overcrowding of structures on the property. I did include an exhibit as part of my written narrative that kind of demonstrates what the surrounding building coverages are. This is pretty much in line with what the neighboring properties have. Certainly doesn't exceed the neighborhood average. As I had already pointed out, the the proposed bulkhead is really what's driving the additional setback relief that's being requested beyond what already exists on the property, which is a fairly minimal request overall. And I would just point out that the existing non-conforming rear deck, that one corner of it does encroach into the same setback. That's obviously being removed and replaced with a conforming addition, but for the coverage relief being sought. So for these reasons, the proposed improvements will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood or negatively affect the public health, safety, or welfare. Substantial justice will be done in granting the variances. Can't really think of any public interest served by denying them. However, the Franklins would be at a loss if denied the opportunity to improve their home in a reasonable manner, such as this, make it more functional for their family. So for these reasons, it would be an injustice to deny the variances. Surrounding property values will not be diminished by granting the variances. I would argue that the architecture improvements associated with the renovation are in keeping with the character of the neighborhood, many of the homes and structures surrounding this property. So for these reasons, it's also, if you look at the plans, it's very tastefully designed renovation. So for these reasons, property values will not be diminished. Finally, literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. Special conditions of this property that distinguish it from surrounding properties are really, property is a corner lot subject to two 15-foot front yard setbacks rather than just one front yard setback and one 10-foot side yard setback. It's also undersized by GRE zoning standards at 5,925 square feet. Taking those conditions together, it has a smaller building envelope than many of the surrounding properties. It's more constrained than many of the surrounding properties, such that there is no fair and substantial relationship between the general purpose of the ordinance provisions, in this case building coverage to prevent the overcrowding of structures on land, setback relief to preserve light, air, and space of structures on abutting properties, or to preserve light, air, and space of abutting properties. And finally, the use is reasonable. The use will remain the same, single-family home use, which is one of the permitted uses in the GRA zoning district. So with that, I'm not sure I have anything else. Last time, the whole neighborhood seemed like they turned out in opposition to what was proposed. Thankfully, tonight, we don't have that situation. So hopefully this is relatively straightforward for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Durbin. Are there any questions for the applicant's attorney? Mr. Mantle?
Yes. Mr. Durbin, the previous approval, you're still going through that, demolishing and rebuilding the two-story garage, the two-car garage, correct?
So the garage on the property would remain, the existing.
Okay.
Yes.
So the previous approval you're throwing out?
Previous approval is basically being thrown out. That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Not basically, it is being thrown out. They can't build it, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mr. Ryu?
Thank you. So you've said a couple of things that I think were a little contradictory, and I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So
Sure.
in the first part of your discussion, you kind of indicated that the bulkhead was only affecting the total coverage on the lot, but in the second part, you indicated that it was determining your right side setback, which is also my impression from drawing AD3, the proposed plot plan. So I just want to validate, is the bulkhead greater than 18 inches, and is it is it driving the setback concern?
That's correct, yes. That would be, yes, that's absolutely correct. There is a portion of it that would be above 18 inches above grade.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No, thank you, Attorney Durbin.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone here who'd like to speak in favor of this application? There's no one online. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to this application? And is there anyone who would like to speak to, for, or against? Seeing no one rise, I will close the public hearing and open up to the board for their consideration.
Madam Chair, I would move to approve the requested variances as presented and advertised.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ram. Is there a second? Second from Mr. Mantle. Your motion, Mr. Ram?
Okay, thank you. As indicated by the applicant's representative, this really is, had previously had approval from this board for something more extensive. I think it's particularly noteworthy that the overall coverage, while still above the maximum allowed of 25%, is less than what is currently on the property. So it actually serves as a reduction. And really the new addition that is on the back end of the property is a single story. As the applicant's representative indicated, it is simply a mudroom and office. So it's a very modest addition. And really the front porch is really driving the front setback relief requirement. And that is something that is, very much a characteristic of this neighborhood. So, certainly allowing the applicant to rebuild an existing front porch would make sense. So with that, going through the criteria, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. Granting the variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance. Again, is this outside of the general characteristics of the neighborhood? This is pretty, again, probably the largest relief in my mind is the replacement of the existing front porch, requiring a 7.5 foot setback where 15 feet is required. But that is an existing element to the building that they are preserving that is something that's very much a characteristic of the neighborhood. So I think in that sense, this is representative of keeping to the essential characteristics. The side yard setback is mostly being driven by the new bulkhead, which is a very, very small imposition to that setback. There is another small portion that is just under 9 feet, which is like an existing bump out in the dining room. But that is again a relatively minor encroachment on the side property. And then really it comes down to overall lot coverage. I think the applicant has demonstrated that a number of the other properties in the vicinity also are similarly above the 25% lot coverage allowance. And then really, again, the applicant is reducing the overall coverage of the current property and only adding on a very relatively small first floor addition. So those two criteria met. Granting the variance would do the substantial justice. Again, that's our general balancing test of the applicant's needs for trying to make maximum practical value out of their property versus the public's needs for the objectives of the zoning ordinance. I think here there's nothing that the applicant is asking for that would outweigh any general public purposes need for strict adherence to the zoning ordinance. Granting the variance would not diminish the values of surrounding properties. Again, this home will essentially look like it did before, rather modest addition on the back side, a rebuilt porch on the front side that will continue to add to the proper character of the neighborhood. The existing garage, while it is certainly very close to the property lines, is something that has been in place for many, many years. The applicant is not proposing to change that in any way. It is not subject to the relief that's being asked for today. So with that, property value should not be affected. And then the hardship criteria. So again, some of the special conditions, the home is already an existing orientation on the property, pushed up towards the front of the property, not an atypical characteristic in this neighborhood in general. So again, that front relief, I think, is really being dictated upon the existing dimensions of the property. The addition of a bulkhead is a very small relief, and then overall the applicant is asking for a smaller overall lot coverage, and with the overall size of this lot being substandard, and many other properties in the neighborhood also face a similar issue where it's difficult to not have some need for relief because of the sizes of the properties. So therefore, there are special conditions of this property that warrant relief from the overall general zoning ordinance for this particular zone. And with that, I recommend approval.
Okay. Anything for the second, Mr. Mantle?
Compared to what was requested in December, which flew by this board, they're only asking for a foot more in the front yard, coupled with a 1% decrease in building coverage. It's a small request. Granted, they had to rework the entire petition to avoid Fisher v. Dover, but I am fully supportive of the petition.
Is there any discussion on the motion?
Just for the record, a Fisher v. Dover applies if it's been disapproved.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
The previous application was approved.
So any more discussion on the motion? Okay. So the motion is to approve the variance as presented and advertised. Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Mr. Ram?
Yes.
Mr. Mannel?
Yes.
Mr. Neese?
Yes.
And the acting chair votes yes. It's approved 6-0. And at this point, we will take a break until 9 o'clock, and then we'll hear the last two applications. Thank you. the meeting back into order. The next order of business is under new business F. The request of Tyler Garzo, owner, for property located at 62 McKinley Road, whereas relief is needed to subdivide the existing lot into 2 lots and demolish and reconstruct the existing garage, which requires the following. 1, variance from section 10.521 to allow a 8,430 square feet of lot area for proposed lot 26, where 15,000 square feet are required. B, 8,430 square feet of lot area per dwelling unit for proposed lot 26. Actually, that says 26. Okay. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Where 15,000 square feet are required. C, a lot depth of 87 feet for proposed lot 26, where 100 feet are required. D, 13-foot rear yard area with 30 feet are required. E, 8,430 square feet of lot area for proposed lot 26-1, where 15,000 square feet are required. F, 8,430 square feet of lot area per dwelling unit for proposed lot 26-1, where 15,000 square feet are required. And G, lot depth of 88 feet where 100 feet are required. Said property is located on Assessor Map 268, Lot 26, and lies within the Single Residence B District. Who is here to speak to this application? Would you please identify yourself for the record?
Good evening. I'm Tyler Garzo, Garzo, at 62 McKinley.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you. I'm in front of you tonight to request variances which will allow the future subdivision of my land at 62 McKinley. 62 McKinley is my primary and only residence. I'm not building anything new on the proposed lot. That is left to a future buyer. Some of my colleagues at UNH's Shoals Marine Lab, as well as 2 directly abutting neighbors, that's Tom at 206 Coolidge and Emily at 183 Coolidge, have expressed interest in buying and building on the proposed lot, which is a graded, cleared, and perhaps missing a new in-character single-family home. My other 2 directly abutting neighbors, that's Pat at 44 McKinley and Joan at 65 McKinley, I thought this project was very reasonable, just in conversation with them. Subdivision is no stranger to this part of Elwyn Park, which was laid out with a few lots almost double the size of those closer to Dondero School as you go east in the neighborhood. 28 Coolidge was subdivided in 2017. 183 Coolidge was subdivided in 2020 into 2.23 acre lots. Addressing some objections from well down the street, including the letter drafted apparently by ChatGPT, the precedent has already been set, and the objectors actually have houses close together already, while I do not. I suspect that these unique extra large plots of land like mine were intended to entice buyers rather than to use space efficiently. And you can see from the satellite image on the first page of my presentation, this was where they started. My relief request intentionally keeps any future home construction under control. The proposed lot retains the single residential B required yards and the required 100 feet of street frontage. I will be the first to object to any new construction on this proposed lot that is out of character with the neighborhood, as it will be my view while cooking dinner. Going through the list of requirements, the variance will not be contrary to the public interest. Our elected officials have continually asked and sought for locations for more housing. The spirit of the ordinances will be observed. 100 feet of street frontage on this proposed lot. Square footage in sync with the majority of the neighborhood. Dividing line in sync with that across the street. This design is in keeping with the spirit of the ordinances to maintain the layout and the character of the neighborhood. Due to mature maple tree screening to the south and multiple mature pine trees to the west on abutting properties. Future construction here does not impact the light and air more than the existing trees do. The value of surrounding properties will not be diminished. New single-family homes are highly sought after in Portsmouth and will provide excellent comps for other sales that happen in the neighborhood. Literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship. Special conditions distinguish the property and project from others in the area. This is a double-sized corner lot. We had a whole planning meeting trying to figure out how to determine the rear yard. No fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance and its specific application in this instance. Single residential B specifications are not really consistent with the neighborhood. 80% of the properties, by my extensive evaluation, have less than 15,000 square feet of land. And you can see in the packet the nearby ones have a red dot on them indicating they are not 15,000 square feet. Much farther to Dondero, like I said, 0.2 acres is very common. They just get smaller and smaller. And proposed reuse is reasonable. It passes a visual test. This is a truly empty lot, not a squeeze-in or anything unusual. And in researching this project, I came across an early John Durgan plan, number 01068 from May 1946. It basically proposed what I'm trying to do right now. Finally, substantial justice will be done. I sit on the sustainability committee as a friend, and I think this merits just a mention of Portsmouth's Climate Action Plan, item CSLU 3, which encourages focusing on the availability of amenities and services within walkable and bikeable areas, and using regulatory mechanisms like zoning-based incentives to achieve the desired outcomes. The planning and zoning ordinance mirrors this with notes to reduce dependence upon fossil fuels, reduce dependence on activities that harm life-sustaining ecosystems. By allowing compatible construction on already graded and cleared land in an existing neighborhood, we are making a collective decision not to continue to support suburban sprawl, not to support greenfield clearing, and not to support drive-everywhere lifestyles that burn fossil fuels, increase exhaust and sound pollution, and deprive adults and children of their independence. This is the finest form of justice for the next generation in my mind. The requested relief allows another person to walk to Market Basket, another family to allow their children to roam a safe neighborhood and walk to Dondero, and another neighbor to enjoy self-reliance and independence that is only possible with land and home ownership. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Mr. Ram.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just, I was a little confused about one thing in your application on page 3 of 13. It's page 197 in our packet. And you talk in the third paragraph from the bottom, I reviewed the entire 114 and relevant 133 neighborhood IDs in Portsmouth property database. Not sure exactly what you're referring to there. I think what you're talking about is tied to your diagram that you're showing on page 6 of 13, page 200 of our packet, but could you just explain a little bit more what your basis is there?
Certainly. I did a deep dive into trying to understand the neighborhood and the lot sizes with some automation. I'm a data scientist sort of guy. And 114 and 133 are just references in the tax assessor maps. 114 is most of Elwyn Park. 133 is the properties that are right on the road or sort of associated with Elwyn Park, but they've been given a not 114 designation. They feel very part of the neighborhood, so I included them. The dot map that you see up there is just planning's recommendation to just focus in a little closer to my house, which you can see circled in green.
Okay, thank you. And then secondly, looking at your sort of proposed plot plan layout, page 199 of our packet, page 5 of 13 of your presentation. So I'm just trying to understand, you have the rear yard variance line, which corresponds to the existing deck on the existing house, but then you have like a hatched area that goes beyond that back in. Is that hatched area intended, there's no dimensioning here, so is that intended to represent the 30-foot setback requirement, or what is that hatching trying to tell us?
Yeah, we went over various ways to try and present this. The survey should serve as the definite version, but the dotted line to the right of the page that overlaps the house slightly is the 30-foot yard, and then where it says rear yard variance and is pink, that's the 13-foot, which aligns directly with the deck.
Okay. And then your relocated garage kind of seems to overlap a little bit. Is your intent to keep the garage out of that 30-foot setback, or is there a need to encroach with the garage, newly created garage as well? Garage.
We sort of figured that if I was asking for that variance, that little bit of garage would just be a part of it, since the house is already a variance. It's possible I could move slightly forward. I mean, it's a foot and a half or so there, and it's just an outbuilding, or an accessory building. So I don't believe it's subject to those yard requirements at all. Stephanie's shaking her head.
It's an accessory structure, so it has the different setbacks.
Okay. But the primary residence, a portion of it would be within the 30-foot setback if the property line gets drawn in the location that you're proposing.
That's correct. We tried to look at this as a corner lot. It doesn't quite meet that specification. There's a lot of discussion. If it was a true corner lot, we would have been able to draw a diagonal line at the. If you were eating a pizza, this would be the first piece of the pie that you would eat. We tried to draw that diagonal line and not make this complicated, but alas, it's not possible.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Mr. Manno?
Yes, and touching on what Mr. Riom said on page 197 about your research into all of 133 Elwyn Park and the houses associated with it. I especially like your graphic with the red dots. My question is, in your research, how many of the lots in Elwyn Park are less than 8,500 square feet?
Less than 8,500, around, well, under 50. More than 25, I think, is what I came up with.
$25 of the, how many lots are there?
There are 291.
25 or less than 8,500 square feet.
I'd have to pull up the data. You can't quote me on this one.
Because that's what you're asking us to decide. 15,000 square foot lot is irrelevant to your request because you want two lots of less than 8,500. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I was mostly looking at it as lots that are not 15,000 square feet that single residential B requests.
Any other questions for the applicant? I actually have a couple of questions. So the second lot, the proposed lot 26.1, does not currently have a building on it. In order for a house to be built on that lot without requiring any further zoning relief, how big would that house be?
So the pictorial representation is the best I can do to answer that question. We took the footprint of my house, which is under 1,000 square feet, and we placed that in the required yard setback area to show that there's indeed space to put exactly the same house in the proposed lot, meeting the required yard setbacks and not asking for any additional variance.
Okay, so it would be a small house of less than 1,000 square feet, correct?
Yeah, less than 1,000 square feet footprint. Could have a second story, of course, or a basement.
1,700.
Okay.
1,700.
1,700 square feet, okay. All right, so the second question I have for you is the substantial justice. I understand your arguments, but what we are tasked as a board is that we're talking about a lot that now currently complies with zoning almost perfectly. So what I want to understand from you is the general public is going to be losing a lot that is in compliance with the zoning ordinance. And as you represented, most of the lots in that area now, it seems like less than 25 have less than 15,000 square feet. How is the benefit to you outweigh the public loss and a lot that conforms with zoning?
I think I took a different take on substantial justice, that the community benefits by some level of density in a largely open space because we don't have to clear additional land or go out into wetlands and ask for those sorts of variances in order to house people. Construction will continue to progress. There's no way to stop it.
Okay, the criterion for us is that substantial justice is a different kind of analysis. So, okay.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Garzo. I'll now open it up to the public, all that's left. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this application? We have no one online. And is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to this application? And is there anyone who would like to speak to, for, or against? Okay. With that, I'll close the public hearing and open up to the board for discussion.
I'll make some comments. Yeah, just some comments though. Not a motion yet. So I guess, so we've struggled with this approach before where when a proposed subdivision is in a neighborhood of other substandard lots, we're taking a conforming lot and making it two non-conforming lots, but those lots are also similar to the size of the other lots that are also substandard. And it is clear that you could build a reasonable single-family home on this property, but it's just a matter of weighing whether or not we think if you create two new lots that are essentially similar in size to neighboring lots, but those lots are non-conforming, it's a trade-off, I guess, and that's what I'm debating myself.
Mr. Mantle?
While I'm sympathetic to the idea of creating a second lot, the applicant, while reviewing his neighborhood, that 87% contain less than 15,000 square feet of land. I get that. We're not subdividing into two lots of just less than 15,000. I don't know how many of those lots are just less than 15,000. He's asking for two lots of less than 8,500. That's a big ask. And he doesn't know, he didn't say, how many lots in Elwyn Park are that small to give it some flavor of the neighborhood. Now, granted, you could put a small house on there, so on and so forth, but I don't know, or I'm not aware of any push to start subdividing 15,000 square foot lots in Elwyn Park. I don't think it's come before this board as long as I've been here. So if it was a larger lot, or he wanted to put an ADU, obviously we have no problem with that, but he doesn't want to be a landlord. He wants to split the lot. And for Elwyn Park, these lots would be too small, in my opinion. I don't want to have grossly undersized lots. Now, you can always change the zoning. And as some of the residents of Elwyn Park, want more dense housing, fine, just get rid of single-family zoning for Elwyn Park. But as long as the zoning's still here, we should follow it. If this was a smaller, bigger lot, and the lots were going to be a little bit bigger, I may feel differently, but no.
Mr. Neese?
I think much like Mr. Mattson, I'm struggling with this one. As you proceed, he's basically asking for a 0.19 acre lot. And as you move down McKinley, I'm not sure which direction, moving away from Islington because McKinley curves. So you see a number of lots that are, 0.20, 0.21. There's even a lot that's 0.19. How many there are, I don't know. I didn't count them all. In the Coolidge area, where this corner is, the lots are larger than that. And so, I struggle with how to reconcile the broader neighborhood with what's in the immediate vicinity of this lot.
Mr. Graham?
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. So, I think the applicant does have some merit to many of the things that he's talking about here. It is true that as you get closer to the Dondero School area, the lots do shrink. However, kind of looking at some of the same information that Mr. Neese was taking a look at, they all seem to be just above 2/10 of an acre, like 2.21, just over. And then certainly as you move closer to Route 1 and closer to the neighborhood that this particular property is in, it's pretty much all of the properties are larger than, quite a bit larger than that, and typically about the same size, in the more of the 4/10 of an acre, 0.35 to 0.4 of an acre size. Now, the applicant does have, I think, some good points with the application in terms of that the existing home is kind of sited to one side of this corner property. I think that lends itself. Some of the other properties that are in the general neighborhood are more depth oriented rather than this width oriented situation that the applicant finds themselves on relative to Coolidge Drive in particular. So I think that is a positive. Is sort of one of the characteristics that does make this unique, and gives some benefit to what he's asking for. But that said, there's still a lot of relief that's necessary here, and my biggest concern is ultimately the building envelope on the new proposed lot. I know the applicant has kind of taken his home and sort of put it on top of this sort of pretty tight building envelope, which is really driven by the front lot setback and the rear lot setback. And if Coolidge Drive was maybe more perpendicular to McKinley, you might have maybe you could get the full lot depth or something closer to it than what the applicant has here. And really, it comes down to a buildable envelope in that space that would be more conducive to a realistic placement of a house and realistic, things that somebody might really want in a home. We have seen a number of times where lots get approved. Some builder comes in and builds something exactly to a very tight buildable lot, and then we get the subsequent owner of that lot to come back to the board and say, well, I really want my deck, or I really want my porch, or I really want this other thing that is going to be outside of the buildable footprint. Yeah, the builder said it was going to be all hunky-dory, but I really want more. And I just am fearful with this very, very tight envelope that's on that second property that's kind of the situation we're going to have. Additionally, with the existing location of the existing structure, the applicant really is asking for some relief, again, not only just for a deck, but really for the home itself, with regards to the new property line that he is proposing to make between the two. So I just think that unfortunately the overall property size is just a little too small, because as pointed out, we end up with 2.19-ish acre lots, which I think would definitely put them in the much smaller percentile of the neighborhood as a whole, and definitely out of the characteristic of the more micro neighborhood portion that's around this particular property. And then really just, you know, the way that our ordinance is currently reading with regards to front and rear setbacks, I don't think it works out. You know, in terms of the greater good that he talks about, many things there that are true. You know, looking for additional housing opportunities. I know that overall the zoning ordinance has been changing to try and improve a lot of those. The main tool currently in the toolbox for additional housing is the accessory dwelling unit, right? That's what we created. We saw the previous applicant that came in here had also kind of looked for, actually had 3 attempts. They one time wanted to break it up into 2 lots, like what is being asked for by this applicant. They then said, well, I want to just put 2 homes on 1 lot. And then finally, they went with the route that is, at least in our current zoning ordinance, the one that's permitted, which is the accessory dwelling unit. And it's, you know, actually a fairly decent sized structure in the end that they were able to build doing that. I just, from a 2-lot standpoint, I just don't think our zoning ordinance has maybe caught up yet. Maybe in the future, there's some legislative action taking place in Concord. There's certainly continuing discussions within the city council and something going forward that may eventually say, yep, you know what, our single family neighborhoods, we need to move the setbacks back. We need to make for more tighter density to be available so that we can go and redevelop some of these neighborhoods. But I just don't think our ordinance is there yet. That's more of a legislative action, whereas what this board does is more judicial in looking what our current ordinance is and what the necessary relief is. And I just think this is asking for a little too much.
Are there any other comments? Okay. I will not be supporting this application. To me, it's the building envelope on the second lot that is just, I think, pretty fatal to it. I don't even know where you would put a driveway on this lot without going into the building envelope. I don't know where a garage would go. I think it's a little bit too close to the lot and back of it. So those are my thoughts, and I think there's been enough discussion. I would await a motion, please.
I'm prepared to make a motion to deny the variance application.
I'll second that.
Your motion, Mr. Who are you?
Just to maybe summarize some of the general comments that were made around the table that I thought were pertinent. First of all, it is a lot of relief being requested. I believe that it should be a pretty high hurdle to take a conforming lot and turn it into 2 non-conforming lots. In the cases where we've done that in the past, the created non-conforming lots were not that non-conforming. You know, it was like just marginally not exactly what was required by the zoning, but it was pretty close. This is very far off. I do not think that dividing this lot into 2 is consistent with the character of the immediate neighborhood, which includes the other corner lots on that same intersection of McKinley and some of the other lots, even within a very tight radius of the property in question. So I think it fails on. I'll say one other thing. The changes in law with regard to accessory dwelling units really obviate the need for subdividing a lot like this to achieve some of the benefits that were stated with regard to substantial justice. Whether those are really relevant to the zoning ordinance or not is another question, but there's other ways to achieve that now with the accessory dwelling unit. So I think that the application fails primarily on the hardship criteria. I could go with others, but I'll just stick with that one because there is nothing that is truly unique about this lot that requires it to, this variance to allow it to be subdivided in order to enjoy the property or to be consistent with the characteristics of the surrounding lots or anything like that. So it fails on the hardship criterion, and I will just rest on that.
Mr. Reum, anything for your second?
Yeah, I would just say, I do think that that the first two criteria as well, the general characteristics of the neighborhood, if you're kind of looking at more the micro neighborhood, the lots really are substantially as what the applicant currently has. Looking to create two lots that would be probably some of the smallest in the neighborhood, and it really just would change the characteristic of especially this micro neighborhood, but even the neighborhood at large. And then, as pointed out, the building envelope that would result with our current setback requirements is prohibitive.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, so the motion is to deny the variance as presented and advertised. Mr. Nees?
Yes.
Mr. Mannel?
Yes.
Mr. Ram?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
No.
And the chair votes yes. I'm sorry, you've been denied. 5-1. Okay. Our next and last application of the night is 420 Pleasant Street. The request of 420 Pleasant Street LLC owner for property located at 420 Pleasant Street, whereas relief is needed to relocate the egress door 1 foot from the left side yard, which requires the following. 1, a variance from section 10.521 to allow 1 foot left side yard where 10 feet are required. And 2, variance from section 10.321 to allow a non-conforming building or structure to be extended, reconstructed, or enlarged without conforming to the requirements of the ordinance. Said property is located on Assessor Map 102, Lot 56, and lies within the General Residence B and Historic Districts. And who is here to speak to the application?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Tim Phoenix from Hopeful Phoenix, Gormley and Roberts, here on behalf of the applicant, 420.
Attorney Phoenix, I just want to interrupt you for 1 second.
Sure.
In your application, there's basically two variance applications, one from your law firm and one from McHenry Architecture. And I just wanted to clarify that it is your.
I think if two were submitted, one was the one from 2021 probably, when McHenry, now Portsmouth Architects, Mark Giannini is with me today, represented the then owner.
Yes.
And got some relief, but that is not what's before you today.
Okay, I just want to clarify that for the record.
Yeah,
that
thank
it
you,
is yours.
thank you. That's helpful.
Okay, thanks.
Again, Tim Phoenix, on behalf of 420 Pleasant LLC. Jeff Semprini is the principal. He and Mark are in the front row to my left. The lot is 4,180 square feet. Traditionally, in a building that was built in the early 1800s, it was up to 5 residential units. Until fairly recently, it was, is my understanding, a former owner lived in it and was converting it, was rehabbing it and converting it to 3 units. Jeff bought it in roughly mid-May timeframe of 2025 after a fire in February. Zoning-wise, the former owner appeared before this board several years ago. There was an addition on the back of the building that was poorly constructed and had, I'll call it an improper, if any, foundation. Received permission to remove that and rebuild it and do a lot of interior remodeling and reconstruction. Between demolition and starting that work, that took place through early 2025, when in February there was a fire. If you look at this image, this is Exhibit A to my submission, which is the Portsmouth Architects plans. The history of it's on their cover, but just to give you some perspective, at the upper left image here, photograph, is the building, and you can see its proximity to the building to its left. That distance actually at the front of the building is fairly significantly greater than the distance between the buildings at the back. The far street is Franklin Street. If you look at the lower right image, you will see some of the effects of the fire that happened in February of this year. And that area, if you start at that back wall where the fire was and come backwards, that's where the addition was that the former owner got permission to remove and rebuild. Jeff bought it and is continuing with the rehabilitation of the building, including reduction from 5 to 3 units, and including rebuilding that the rear addition that was in the location where the fire was. I believe that, was the addition gone when the fire happened? Yeah, the addition was already moved, so the fire was at the back. I've been in the building. It's kind of cut up. There's a lot of smoke damage and fire damage in that area. And Steph, if you just go to the, let's see. If you go to page A3, next one, right there. So, again, this tells us a couple of things. One, on the right image, you'll see the hash mark, and what's going on there is a dormer is being put in to accommodate a door that I'll explain more. I'll show you more in a moment. The setback, side setback of this dormer is also 1 foot, which is what presently exists and what was approved in the early 2020s by the former owner. If you look at the right-hand image, and if you look right about in the center of the image, you'll actually center right, you'll see the stairway going down. And originally there was a door proposed to come off of that stairway entrance on a landing and go out to the deck. You see the word deck at the upper right of that left-hand image. So the change is to get rid of that. It was unwieldy. We had concerns about safety. So a French door was proposed, and you'll see that at the left side of the upper right deck that opens onto that deck. And originally that was both for, we considered that both for safety and aesthetics. The building is sprinklered, so safety is not a code concern, but it is a livability concern because we didn't really want the second means of egress to be along the same stairway where you'd get access out to the deck. If you would go to page A4, Steph, these next two really outline what's happening. So here's A4. You see on the left image, what's closest to you on the right is the new addition rebuilt, and essentially it's no higher, it's not as high as the existing dwelling, and you can see the dormer. And the dormer is necessary because if you go to A6, and this is also, these images in A6 are also embedded in my narrative. The building, the image on the left is what was originally proposed for that access door, which is off the stairway, if you will. On the right of that image is the roof. It's a hip roof, so the roof is slanting down towards that wall where you see the window. When they decided to put a door in, you've got a 78 or 80-inch door, the sloping roof interfered with it, so the dormer was constructed or designed. So in the right image, you'll see the French doors and the dormer. So what we have is on the right side of that what I'm calling that dormer, which raises the sloping hip roof and creates the pitched roof on both sides. The lower right side of that is the same distance as the rest of the building and as was approved several years ago, meaning it's 1 foot. And the rest of the whole structure from the deck down was also approved where it is at 1 foot, where 10 feet was required. So the variance that we're asking for really is just the change from what was the hip roof over on the left-hand image that slopes down to 1 foot and gets to 0 or just a little bit as it gets closer to the wall, to the proposal, which is with the dormer, and therefore you've got the 1 foot starting at the same place but then rising up. So there's a very slight expansion of the non-conforming portion of the building that is 1 foot but less than, at least 1 foot but less than 10 feet from the side property line. I think I made
Say that again, please.
I'm glad you're laughing about that, Beth, because I think I made something very complicated that is pretty simple to see there. But that's all we're asking for. That's the sum total of the whole relief. It's driven in part by the fire that happened and created a lot of damage that Jeff is in the process of fixing. I think it's a positive I think it's aesthetically more pleasing than that window. It's safer coming from that living area out onto a deck if there's a fire, rather than have to go to only go to the stairway, which might be where the fire is. So although because it's sprinklered, the code doesn't require that second means of egress, we think it's both a safety and an aesthetic and livability issue. So unless there's questions about that, the various requirements 1 and 2, public interest and spirit of the ordinance. I go through the purposes as always, but getting to the nitty-gritty of it, the issues is will granting the variance alter the essential character of the locality or threaten the public health, safety, or welfare? Nobody's really going to even notice this except the people who live there. Jeff has had some meetings with neighbors who are in favor of what he's doing there, including this. I don't see any of them here. I don't know if they're online, but I don't see anybody here to object. So again, we think this is very simple. The building has been there for not decades, as I often argue, but for centuries, and has always been very close to the main road, very close to Franklin, and very close to this existing building. Originally, I read somewhere where that back area was about 6 inches from the building to the right as you're looking at this image. That was via the variance granted in 21 or 22, I forget which, was moved to a foot. This maintains that foot. So we're not changing the character of the locality, and for the reasons I've stated, we're not threatening the health, safety, or welfare. Substantial justice test is if there's no benefit to the public that would outweigh the hardship to the applicant, this factor is satisfied. Any loss to the applicant not outweighed by a gain to the general public is an injustice. For the reasons I've stated, I won't belabor it. This allows a tasteful dormer, aesthetically pleasing, more livable because you can get easier access to that deck from the living area. That there's just plain and simply no harm whatsoever to substantial justice. There's no harm to the public, but denying it makes the house less livable and we think less safe. It's a very, very small ask, starting with 1 foot as that roof goes up. The fourth requirement is that granting the variance will not diminish surrounding property values. I think that's evident. This is tucked inside, if you will, the building. You have to go to the front, I guess I would say, of that deck to even get to where that door is and where that dormer is. Unless you're looking for it, you're not even going to notice it. So surrounding property values will not be diminished. But the overall project, including this, including the reduction to 3 units, which means there'll be less need for parking, less traffic, et cetera, in that area, means that property values will not be diminished. And then finally, hardship. The first prong is special conditions. Again, this board may or may not have been the same members back, I think it was 21, granted the variances to the prior owner to essentially replace that deck, including the hip roof that we show in that left image that was already there, but I don't know what repairs or anything had to be done. But that the addition that you see in the lower part of that left-hand image is what was removed and what was approved several years ago by this board. Also, only 1 foot from the property line, and it really has to go there to match up with the rest of the front of the building. So that's all that's happening here. The existing size of the lot, it's deep, it's 4,000 square feet, but most of that is depth. It's very narrow. The building is on or very close to both the left and right property lines and also the front property line. So you have to put an addition and therefore a dormer where the building is. We think those combine for special conditions. The second prong of the hardship test is that there's no fair and substantial relationship between the purposes of the ordinance and its application. We have setbacks to preserve air and light, to give distance between property owners in certain respects for sight lines, et cetera. None of those apply here because of the location of the long existing 200-year-old building and the building next to it. Those have been in that proximity, to my knowledge, for centuries. So there's no reason to increase the setback for this area of the main house to 10 feet because you'd be cutting off part of the house that's been there forever. Instead, we're just asking for this very, very light relief. So there's no reason to apply the 10-foot setback given the existing location of that building and its history. And then finally, the proposed use is reasonable. I always cite the Vigent v. Hudson case that says if the use is permitted, it's reasonable. This is a dimensional variance, not a use variance, but for the same reasons as the use is reasonable, we believe that the very insignificant relief being requested is reasonable. I have nothing else other than to answer your questions. I don't know if Mark or Jeff want to add anything to what I've said before that. Seeing no one, have at it.
Mr. Mattson.
Yeah, I just have a question, more of a curiosity. For your hardship criteria with the substantial justice, I've seen you reference Walker v. City of Manchester before, but I was wondering about Belanger v. City of Nashua, where you're saying the case represents where a variance is proper when the ordinance no longer reflects the current character of the neighborhood. I guess I just a little.
Yeah, I to be honest with you, Monica drafted this, so I'll throw her under the bus because she's not here. So I don't know what she was thinking, but then when I read it, we discussed it a little bit. I did read it and was fully aware of it when it was submitted. But that case, I wasn't 100% sure of the application of that, or Walker v. City of Manchester, frankly. But I think the point is that area has a lot of real old homes, very old homes that are very large, very close to lot lines, etc. So we're asking for a very small amount of relief on a building that already significantly violates the side setback. And there are, to our knowledge, other buildings in that area and on this street that are similarly situated. So an argument exists legally that if the neighborhood doesn't reflect what the zoning requires, you can get a variance for that. I'm not really relying upon that at this point. I think it speaks for itself. It's so minor. If I had to do it again, I probably would have left it out.
Any other questions for the attorney's applicant? Anything we can do to turn Attorney Phoenix into a pretzel or just a turn? Okay. Thank you, Attorney Phoenix.
Thank you.
And is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this application? There's no one online. Against this application, or to, for, or against? And seeing no one rise, I will close the public hearing and open it up to the board's consideration. Board?
I'll make a motion to grant the variance request as advertised and presented.
Okay, and is there a second? Mr. Neese? Mr.
Okay,
Mattson, your notion, please.
Yep, going through the criteria, I'll take the first two together. The variance is not contrary to the public interest and the spirit of the ordinance is observed. Here, the proposed use will remain the same and it doesn't conflict with the purpose of the ordinance because where that side of that building has existed for hundreds of years. And it won't alter the essential character of the neighborhood because it's not even visible from the street, and it's de minimisly imposing on what's already there. Substantial justice is done. The benefit to the applicant should not be outweighed by harm to the general public, and here in this rehabilitation of this property and dwellings, it makes a lot of sense that this benefits the applicant, and there's no obvious evidence that this harms the public. And the values of surrounding properties are not diminished. Again, this building is being rehabilitated. It'll improve its value, and therefore no reason to think that it would harm neighboring properties. And then finally, literal enforcement of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship because of the special conditions of the property, and that there's no fair and substantial relationship between the purposes of the ordinance and the specific application to this property, where again this building has existed where it has well before zoning existed, and this hasn't been a problem. So the light and air and privacy is reasonable for this location, and again it's not visible from the street, so And then finally, the proposed use is a reasonable one. This is still, it's actually reducing the number of residences, but it's still just a multifamily residential building with minimal changes that are visible from the street.
Thank you. Anything for your second, Mr. Neese?
Nothing to add.
Okay, so the motion is to approve the variance as presented and advertised. Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Mr. Rayam?
Yes.
Mr. Mannel?
Yes.
Mr. Neese?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. You have your approval. Thank you. Okay, and with that, that concludes this evening's business.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.